Welcome once again to Patio Prayer and Praise Time, Wisdom for the Family. It's so awesome to have you back with us again today. And we are so excited about the past election. I know some is for, some are against, but we know God get the glory, and it doesn't matter who's president. We know God is still king, and he's still on the throne, and he's still reigning from heaven above. However, I have a guest with us today on the patio. We have Daryl number 1 and we have Daryl number 2. Yes, my only begotten son, in whom I am proud. Okay, and this is really an exciting year for me because this is my youngest son
Youngest child.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, honey. Mm-hmm. And he has become involved in the political community, and I'm so excited about that because I can remember when he was in school, and I can remember telling him, someday you will feel a part of the American dream, or a part of America. You will become immersed into this melting pot, and you will see how it's was not only created but how it was supposed to operate. So this year he was part of the political process, and he's been voting for years, but he really became informed of everything that was going on, and a lot of people who's in positions in Washington, and the two candidates, Biden and Trump. And so we just wanted to share a few things today, kind of like what we kind of felt about, I guess, the election, and as African Americans, because for so many years we have been attending, I guess you could say, white churches, and we've always had love for them, and we just kind of wanted to share how they are kind of like what the African Americans were kind of feeling as we went through this political process with the elections this year, and actually for the last 4 years, how going to church has really been a challenge, because we just, for myself personally, I felt like not the white pastors was not addressing some of the issues that was going on in the United States for African Americans and people of color. I just felt like there wasn't enough said. However, we're going to bring in the new millennials. I don't know if you consider as a millennial or not.
Yeah.
Are you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the old dog. No. And the older point of view. I guess you can say that. As you know, as Christians, we were all prompt to vote Republican because we are always encouraged to vote for the platform, for the Christian right, I guess you can say. But this year was so difficult to continue because we love the Lord with all our heart, and that's no problem. I'm a 4th generation preacher's kid. I've been in church all my life. I've raised my children in church, and now my children's children are raising their children in admiration of the Lord. So being a Christian is no problem. But when it comes to your civil rights, and to elect a president who I felt personally, my own opinion, that did not care a lot about people of color, it made it hard to vote for the Republican and that platform. So what I'm going to do, as far as a millennial, we're going to get his point of view, because not only he's a millennial, he's been raised to love the Lord, keep his commandments, do the things that are right. So I want to get his point of view on the election. So Daryl, I want you to share with us how you felt about the election, how you felt about the former president.
Wanted to see our rights protected. I noticed a lot of socialist ideologies circulating on the far left, not the moderate left, so not Democrats as a whole, but on what we would all agree upon would be the radical left, where I would say progressives have gone so far as to deny science and individual rights, including free speech to a degree. And so, yeah, my vote was very much based in principle. I didn't follow so much of the media rhetoric of a somehow more racist America under Trump. I couldn't find the evidence for it. What I did see is the younger generation, including my own, taking to the streets and acting very childish. I'll say that. That's the way I think about it. And I don't see how giving those childish acting people their way improves our society, especially when given the facts of how there is no evidence.
So when you say taking to the streets, acting childish, are you are referring to the riots, or no, not the riots, but the protesting?
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, not even the protesting. It was the first word you said. The riots, the protests are protected under your First Amendment as Americans. The rioting and looting is where there's a contradiction, and where the governors of the cities that were chastised were very rightly chastised, I would say.
Okay.
Because there have been statements put out saying don't arrest these people whenever, even after they've looted and destroyed public property or private property, destroyed businesses.
But remember, we found out that it wasn't the African Americans, it was the group that was planted inside of those riots, Tifa. They were the ones that were strategically placing bricks, and it was when they showed just videos of, it wasn't African Americans, it was mostly the white Tifa group who was shown rioting and looting. It wasn't really the African Americans. It was supposed to be, from what I saw, a ploy of making them look like they were doing this, but it wasn't really the African Americans.
That's a good point.
Not all conclusive though.
Right.
I wouldn't say that it wasn't.
We know that in Chicago,
yeah.
it was some of that going on.
Right, and even here in Arlington, or right in North Collins Street, where you have right next to the stadium, across the street from the stadium, the Walmart. There's videos of, I'm not gonna lie, it's majority black people trying to break into the Walmart.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you something before I forget too. I heard you say the word scientific.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you referring to?
Specifically, gender studies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or we can even refer to conception when it comes to babies.
Okay. So you, like you said, pro-choice. You're not pro-choice.
I'm not.
You're not pro-choice. So that was one of the things, and that's understandable because we're all Christians, correct? So we were pro-choice. But that was the problem I feel like with the election, and that's probably why the election turned out the way it did. You notice that a lot of the Republicans they remained in office, and they even won seats. However, our former president, was not reelected.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that America was not a conservative America. They just did not want, I feel like, the rhetoric or that type of atmosphere in America any longer. What do you think about that, baby? Do you think they felt like they just needed a new type of covering of America versus the Trump era?
Yeah, I think like something we were just looking at, the negotiation and the way the negotiations are held from a business perspective versus politics. Things just happen a little bit differently, and I think there was some rubbing and the way things were being done. If you're running a business and you're trying to get something done and get something accomplished, it's almost like by all means necessary you're trying to get that accomplished. Where when you look at politics, you bring in negotiations together to come to that conclusion of what we're gonna do and get the buy-in of each house and things of this nature. And I just think that sometimes that character side of doing business kind of rubbed America a little bit the wrong way when we're looking at an all-conclusive effort toward any agenda that we're trying to do. And I think that sometimes those different characteristics got in the way of what we truly was trying to accomplish as a nation. Even though I feel like there was purpose in him being there. I look at when he first came into office, the need for that business mindset. I feel like when Obama was in office, there was a need. I mean, in Arlington, I mean, in the Metroplex area, businesses were shut down. And so you needed somebody to bail them out. But then once you did all that bailing and you borrowing money and you're creating dollars or whatever, now you need that business mind to get our economy back where it needs to be and everything else. And I think there's so many other things was a distraction in seeing the value of his presidency and what he was bringing to the table. And even going into him having the opportunity to do another 4 years, those things just being a base where he could bring his value to the forefront is still being, kind of blocked out by a lot of the rhetoric going on.
Because we didn't deny that he did bring some good things to America. I mean, and actually he was definitely did some good things in Israel, right? And the tax situation, and there were some things that he did
Trade
great.
and all
But I
that.
think so many people just could not look over his character and his silence with the suffering of people of color. You know what I mean? So I just kind of want to move on to the church as members of as African Americans, as members of a white congregation and white pastors,
Right.
because we felt like they just didn't say enough.
Yeah. When you look at that, despite who you have, I heard one man of God say, vote for the platform and not the character. And I can understand that. But when it comes to the church, if you're going to say anything at all about politics at all, then you have to speak to the character, right? And after reading Proverbs 9 today in the TPT version, I can see why you wouldn't, but to the person directly, but to your church and to your body. That's the point, you know what I mean? Because we love the whole world. Jesus gave his son and he died for the sins of the whole world. So God loves the whole world. So from a church perspective, you have to be all conclusive to reach everybody.
Right.
Right? Because Jesus died for us all to save us all. The root cause to what's going on in America today is in the soul. We need souls saved.
Right.
We need people delivered. We need them set free. Like the word says, you're going to prosper being healthy even as your soul prosper. So the church should stay with that. Preach the gospel, preach the love of God, keep in that regard. And no matter who it is, when we out of character, it is what it is. Right?
Yeah, and I think one thing we said too, that me personally, I just kind of felt like the pastors who are that were surrounding him, Paula White, great woman of God. I'm not gonna call out my pastor. He even was so excited he had his phone number. But no one can speak into his life to get his character together in 4 years for him to love all mankind. Because I told you today, I said it's kind of like a parent. You got this one child who does everything right, and then you have this one child who doesn't do everything right, and you have to spend more time with that child. Well, I don't love not one of my children more than the other.
Right.
My wish and my prayer is that the one who's not doing things right will at some point come into foreclosure and do things right. So I'm not going to throw them out with the dishwater.
Right.
Okay? So some kind of way the church didn't include all America. So it made the church Christians, it gave us a challenge to vote in this election. Because we knew the heart of God is to love. It's not to exclude no one. Because he died for us all.
Right.
So, and I think the main thing that we wanted to address as far as being African Americans that belong to a white congregation was that we just wanted to hear them say, at the very least, that this president does not really represent all Christian values. He may have some challenges in some areas, However, because of his platform, we're going to support him. But we didn't hear any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was always he's the God sent.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like the man that was on the pedestal. You know what I mean? On the pedestal. So could we hear something that say God, his behavior or his silence concerning what's going on in America, he shouldn't be silent.
Right.
But instead, every Sunday we got, he's the God sent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like God is whipping people of color, and God don't care about people of color, which we know that it's not true.
Right. Well, I would like to add something to that and put things in perspective from a standpoint, like you said, the church, we need them to address the body of Christ and
Right.
say, hey, this is not right. This perspective is not right. Though our platform from a character standpoint. But as far as addressing him wouldn't be appropriate. And I'm going to read why. Proverbs 9, the TPT version, which is the Passion Translation, says, lay aside, and it's starting at verse 6, chapter 9, verse 6, Proverbs. Lay aside your simple thoughts and leave your paths behind. Agree with my ways, this is wisdom talking. Live in my truth, and righteousness you will find. If you try to correct an arrogant cynic, expect an angry insult in return. Now, when you just think about it now, if the character is arrogance and cynic, then you might get tweeted.
Get a tweet.
Get an insult in a tweet. On
Well,
a
you know,
return.
so many proverbs instructs us not to
Mhm.
correct
Right,
a fool,
right,
or they're just going to mock you. So
Right.
many of the proverbs
Mhm.
tell us that.
right,
So maybe that's why he has all yes men around him,
right.
because they knew there was no one that could speak into his life.
Mm-hmm. And then watch this next script. He said, and part of he said, and if you try to confront an evil man, don't be surprised if all you get is a slap in the face. Now we look at, all what went on in this administration, people getting fired and everything else, and so you see all what happened, what went on. It don't take away from his abilities, but just speaking from the church perspective, to hold them accountable, to say, hey, speaking to his life or whatever. If you look at it from the scriptures perspective, what God did call us to do is to pray.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it was the Democratic Party or whether it was the Republican Party, we're supposed to pray,
Right.
and pray for America and those that are in leadership.
And I think that's where a lot of the millennial Christians went this year, because they felt like sin is sin.
Mm-hmm.
So if I got to pray that for abortion, I might as well pray against everything else on the Democratic side, what they felt like that was not Christian like.
Right.
So they was like, sin is sin. So if I'm gonna pray for Trump, I might as well pray for Biden. But at least if I'm praying for Biden, at least I can live maybe safe in America. I shouldn't have to walk out my door and be treated a certain kind of way just because of the color of my skin.
Well, I feel like also with that, and I think God is so wonderful in that, in how we vasculate between Democratic and Republican presidents, because it brings back balance. It's so like if the rich get out of hand, you know what I mean? You know God don't like when you oppress the poor. You know what I'm saying? So then things are flipped back for a minute just to bring balance back, and then you see the Republicans back in office. It's like you would think that people would get it, even from a Christian standpoint. If you read the Word, and God talked about being investors, and me and my son was talking about the 100 to 1,000% return on the income. Well, when Jesus got through preaching about that in both instances, and you can reach out to us, we can get you that information. Jesus gave the mandate after he taught them how to prosper, how that when they came to visit him and he was naked and he was hungry, and they came to visit him in the hospitals and everything, that when they did this to the least of these little ones, they did it unto me. So the church is supposed to be prosperous and reaching out to the less fortunate, not the government.
Right.
So that's the whole messed up about it. We're looking for the government handout instead of the government putting the laws and things in place for everybody to prosper, and then we reach out and be a blessing to the least fortunate and win them to Christ. Let them get the inheritance that Jesus died for them to have, and we reach out again, and we, right? Because even Jesus said the poor you're going to always have. So there's going to be a behavior that causes people to be poor, but there's also the blessing of the Lord they can make rich, right? So I just think the gospel just needs to be preached,
Right.
and the perspective of the word of God.
So what do you think, Daryl, when you heard that one of your siblings who has loved the Lord, served the church, worked in the white community probably all her life, and
Served.
because of this election or because of the temperature in America in the last 4 years, she now is contemplating challenging. She's challenged with her faith.
Or at least to leave the church. Leave that church.
Well, I think God's not the author of confusion, and I think that there's a lot of confusion happening on it when it comes to politics in general.
I'm trying to get that.
And
That's me.
yeah, so what you find out is there's a lot of one sentence slogans that play a big part in politics. That a lot of different inner workings are going on underneath these umbrella terms, and so a lot of times what we'll hear is things like we'll hear the term like, let's say, pro-choice, for example. Now it sounds very simple, like who doesn't want the choice to choose, right? But what you find out is what you're actually choosing is to kill a young baby all the way up until birth. So, what you find out is things aren't as, hunky-dory as you might have thought. We got more phrases than that. We have this new phrase of what's supposed to be social justice or social equality. And what you find out is what people are challenging are words that we've used for as long as we've had the English language, like man and woman. There used to be a concrete idea of what that was, and now that's being challenged. Well, let's see. We got more. We got, like I said, social equality. We got what used to. What's funny now? Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. But I think what happens is, like I said, there's a lot of confusion on both sides. I'll go ahead and say it's all the way around. The media will like to demonize the other one side against the other, and so people get, sucked into their bubble, and it gets harder and harder to see and empathize with the other side. So you would think that you would stay more or less objective about the matter, but what ends up happening is everybody has their bias.
Yeah, but you have the right idea. What you're saying is awesome and correct, and this is how we should think about things. And that's the challenge with so many Christians, is because we know that this is how we think and this is what we believe. But on the other hand, we can't take this arrogance and someone who's leading us who we don't feel like care about us. So how do we balance the two? So I felt like they balanced the two by voting for the senators, the House, the mayors, and all of them, as many Republicans as they possibly could, but just fire the president. And try to balance it out. Like, where else can I go but except to the Lord? But that's just show the devastation of what we've suffered for the last 4 years. You listen, it's like they just don't understand the suffering of what African Americans have been through in this country to try to get where we are today. For them to say, make America great again, and all we can see is making America great again, it's taking us back to the last 200 years. And if you can't address that in your service to say that's not what he's talking about, that's not what we mean, that's all we got to say. That's not what it's talking about. Just say it so people can feel comfortable that they're loved and that you don't have to feel threatened because you can't change the color of your skin, but you can change your behavior. You know what I'm saying? So that's all we're saying about, as an African American who has attended probably white congregation, probably more years than she have an African American. You know what I mean?
That is correct.
You know what I'm saying? Just all we're asking is just say
Including
that.
when we pastor.
Yeah, including when we pastor.
Yeah.
You know, so we just wanted to address and hear from a millennial versus us concerning this election this year, because it was, like I said, a difficult election for the Christian right as well as I'll say for the Democrats, because it was a lot of things that went on in the last 4 years that we probably have to pray about.
I guess I'll leave this one last nugget, is that if this election, or if what's going on in government actually does matter to you, stay focused on it longer than just November 3rd.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I will say.
Yes.
If it means so much to you, and you actually want to vote on the issues, go ahead and pay attention to those issues every other one of those 364 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that will help you be informed when you make your next election decision. And that's all I can. That's all I really want from everyone. You know, if you've been paying attention, then I feel like it doesn't matter who you vote for at that point, because you have your reasonings behind it. You know, but if you're going by media rhetoric, I don't think you're gonna. You know, honestly, I don't see the benefit in that for anybody. So
Yeah, because we already know Facebook plays games with us. They let you see what they want you to see, and this community see what they want to see. So they kind of bring in the confusion. But we already know, like I said, Jesus is Lord, God is King, and we got to keep Him in the forefront of everything we think, say, or do.
Yes.
And I guess I'll encourage those of y'all who think that you know, like I did originally, that people made a foolish decision in giving the office over to someone who we haven't heard a promise from yet. I would say that, you know, God uses the things that are foolish to confound the wise. So even though we might think that we know everything that we need to know about politics in order to make the most educated decision, it's not necessarily the case that that's the will of God. So we need to keep that in mind, that God's will is always in action. So we're gonna, whichever way we roll for it, whichever way it goes, we gotta pray for our president. And I mean, and I can, you know, I empathize with those of y'all who are going to miss the transparency coming from the Oval Office. You know what I'm saying?
That's one thing you know you're gonna get what's right on his mind.
That's right. You know?
He's not a politician at all. That's the words out of the vice president's mouth. He's not a politician. So you see what you get.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's a good note
That was
to end it on. Right?
Yeah.
So remember
That you are
happy, healthy,
wealthy, fit, and forgiving.
Okay.